What's up, everybody? It's Brendan Hauser with EVOQ Bike. If you love training, this is the podcast for you. Fred Wright from Bahrain is on, and after the podcast, after we hit cut, he's like, "Man, I just ramble a lot about my training?" And I said, "No, this was incredible. The detail of do you want more aero? Do you want more watts? What do you do when you're a really good rider that can do classics, grand tour stages, and time trials? Does the team force you one way or the other? What about the gym? What's his banger workout, which sounds absolutely brutal? He was too focused on losing weight at one point. How did that affect training? The grand tours? Fred was a wealth of information. Thank you so much for doing this, Fred. And everybody, it's winter season. If you need a new trainer, check out the Psych Plus T3. We'll put a coupon code for $200 off. It's super quiet. It does not need power to actually use, so you can bring it to a race and warm up on it. Check out more info. We posted a video about it. Everybody, good luck with your training race, and we'll talk to you later. See ya. How you doing, man? Where are you calling in from?
I am in Girona at the moment, actually.
So you live there
So
all year?
no, I've actually me and my girlfriend, as of a couple months ago, moved over to Andorra. So we're kind of spending the time. Yeah, had a place in Manchester in the UK, and now I'm living. Yeah, we both decided let's do it. Let's live abroad for a bit I say for a bit, maybe for the rest of my career. Next 10 years or so. But yeah, we're kind of both ready for it. So yeah, it's quite exciting, really.
Yeah.
It's nice. I've kind of stayed in Girona and stuff before. We're sort of here. My coach was a bit like, oh, maybe don't. The first few training rides in Andorra are a bit tough. Like straight away going up big mountains or whatever. So it was nice to. So he was a bit like, oh, no, maybe just head down to Girona before the first team camp or whatever. So here I am.
How you liking it over there so far?
Yeah, it's great. It's kind of, I was here when I was an under-23, probably what would have been like 5 years ago now. So I sort of know the roads, and I've got plenty of guys that I know here. I used to live with Ethan Hayter, and I'm staying in an apartment just down the road, down near where he is. So no, it's really nice actually. It's good.
That's awesome. I actually spent.
I mean, it's a complete cycling bubble here in Girona, but it's it's a good place. It's definitely this time of year. It's really nice. There's always people to ride with. It's a nice sort of place to start. Getting the ball rolling with training and stuff.
How do you like riding outside of Manchester?
As in, like, how did I find riding in Manchester? Or
I only asked because I actually was there for maybe 3 weeks, living in some guy's Airbnb, and so it was before I was heading over to Belgium and for school. And so I can't remember. This was back in 2015, maybe. So couldn't even tell you where I rode. But I thought it was for like a big city. I wasn't sure what to expect once I got used to how to get out. I thought the riding was pretty good.
oh no, it's to be honest, it's really like it's actually really good. I think it's one of the sort of best cities in the UK to because you've basically just got the Peak District next to it,
Yeah.
and I had a place just sort of south of Manchester, so really I didn't have to ride very far, maybe a good 10-15 minutes, and you'd already start seeing the hills and stuff. So no, I've got I could train really well there. There was all sorts. There was flat roads,
Hmm.
hilly roads, maybe not super long climbs, but the I'm thinking the peak of the highest climb is still something like you still get up to like 500 meters, which is not for efforts and stuff and variation. It's actually yeah, it's great. It's just the weather's terrible.
Yeah. I
This is
lucked out when I
like
was there, but
now it's snowing, for example. So
it's snowing already.
yeah. I think I don't know. It's rare that it snows this early in the UK, but yeah, all over the UK it's been snowing today. So like I'm kind of here now. Like went and just did a 3 hours this morning. Like this would have been so much harder if I was back in Manchester.
The mental energy, the
But
bundling everything up,
it's
getting
I think
ready.
there's positives to that training environment. Like I think I still fitted it quite well. I still kind of because I was quite close to the I know a few of the track guys there, so I was quite close to the track. There was good facilities there to use, and no, I still I don't know. I think maybe I'll go back there when I'm when I'm a bit older, and because I love, as a city, I love Manchester. You know, I
Hmm.
grew up in London, so I've kind of got a bit of a. I like living in an environment, living in a kind of more bustling, busy place. So yeah, don't ask me why. I guess that's what all the cyclists do, is they go and live in Andorra, but it is a bit of a change, you know. It's not. I guess Andorra La Vella is quite a busy city, but it's nothing on what I sort of grew up with. So
Yeah, it's always
yeah,
like perspective and comparison changes everything. So
yeah. But I'm
let's do
really
a
glad
quick
I've
intro.
moved. Yeah,
Go ahead.
I'm glad we're here. It's
Yeah,
good.
me too,
We're in
man.
there.
I'm glad we
It's
got to
good.
connect.
Yeah.
Let's do a quick intro for like the two people that don't know who Fred Wright is. So yeah, just who are you? Introduce yourself as a cyclist and we'll take it from there.
Um. Well, yeah. Hello. I'm Fred Wright. I'm a professional cyclist. I ride for Team Bahrain Victorious. Yeah. I'm a. What do you want me to say? And what kind of rider I am? I guess
Yeah,
I'm a
please do
bit
because
of a
actually my first
bit of a
question. I mean,
classics rider, but also an opportunist as well.
mm,
That's how I'd. Yeah, a
what
classic
is define
opportunist.
opportunist?
As in, when I'm not in races where I haven't not thinking about the classics, I'm taking opportunities where they come. I'm trying to attack, trying to get involved. Yeah, I think I kind of enjoy that aspect of stage races. You know, like trying to
Mm.
target individual days, or think, you know, looking at the profiles going into something and being like, that's a good day for me, or I'm gonna take it easy today, or you know, I enjoy that aspect, and then I also obviously love racing the classics. It's just the best time of year. I just love it.
Do you have a
So
favorite classic?
um, I I think I have to say Flanders over Roubaix, but it's
Mm.
very close.
Hmm.
It's very close.
What why do you like that so much?
I just I think it goes back to when I was quite young. My cycling club, they still do it as well. They'd always go out and do the sportif. So the
Oh,
VCL, my old cycling club. So when I was sort of 13, 14, I went and did the Flanders sportif and then watched the pros on the day after. So, you know, watching, I can't remember what year it was. It must have been maybe it was 2014. Basically, the last year Boonen won,
okay.
and we were watching on the Quermont, and it was just absolutely insane. And I remember being like, "Wow, this is so cool." And I think, okay, maybe Roubaix is probably the bigger race to win, but I've just got a bit more of a connection to Flanders.
Do you guys look at it as the bigger? I feel like there's people in camps, right? It's like Flanders, Roubaix. Like people have the reason why they like, but does everyone put Roubaix as the classic in
I
the
think
peloton?
I think it's just like the history of it.
Yeah,
I think that if you, I think you go down more in history if you've won Roubaix over if you've won Flanders. I don't
that's
know
fair.
though. To a Belgian, they'd go Flanders is like biggest day of the year. So
So then you mentioned stage races. You've done Vuelta and Tour. Do you have a preference to either of those?
that's tricky because they both have very different kind of like dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
The year a couple of years ago when I did the Vuelta and then the Tour, what was great about the Tour is there's a lot of there's extra build up, there's extra pressure, and when that leads to success, the Tour is the best thing ever. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's amazing. But then a lot of guys, and I guess I found it a little bit this year, like the stress of the Tour is also a lot. It can be too much. It's a bit like, whoa, this is the pinnacle of the sport, but all that being the pinnacle of the sport, it comes with a lot more stress. And I think the Vuelta is almost that year that I did the Vuelta after the Tour, it was almost the complete, not the complete opposite, but quite completely relaxed in comparison. You know, like you got your even like the bunch sprint stages where you're trying to fight for position. All these things are just everyone's a bit more like, yeah, it's end of season. It's not too bad, you know. And I think I mean, nowadays it's getting less and less like that, but I still found there was a big difference in the stress levels the year I did both. So I think the Vuelta I really enjoy. I'd quite like to do it next year, to be honest. I really enjoyed it.
Well, that was gonna be one of my questions. If you could pick the 2025 schedule, you line up everything. What races are you hitting?
If I could choose, I think I'd like to. I think I'd almost like to mirror that same, do similar, but it's hard because the worlds are in Rwanda and the amount of I don't think I'm going to go to the worlds in Rwanda, but if I'm going to go dream, just because it would be amazing to go to the worlds in Rwanda, I think dream schedule would be build up to the classics, finish in the pot. Finish at still do Amstel. Finish at Amstel, then build up to the Tour, do the Vuelta, and race Rwanda Worlds. That's like my dream. I love that. I mean, I haven't done the Giro, but I do quite like. I think doing the Giro after the classics is quite. I'm not ready to give that a try yet. I feel like that would be hard.
I was going to ask, in your head, what type of break do you think you need? Or what would you do in between? They say, hey, you're doing Amstel. Fred, we need you to go to the Giro. What's that period in between? How would you shape that up?
Oh, it's tricky. I think I definitely still do the same. I probably still would have 5 days to a week real easy after Amstel. I'd still just have a pause, but immediately maybe it would be less time than I've had before. I think it'd probably be more like 5 days easy, but still riding a little bit, and then I guess you'd have to head to altitude if there's enough time. I think
I was going to say, is there enough time? So what is that? Is that 2 weeks? 3? Do you think you'd have enough time to, like, if you went to altitude, to get some adaptation and then coming
probably
back?
not.
Yeah.
Probably not. But it would involve going somewhere to do a bit more of a specific training block, because normally that period after you go easy after, say, the last classic you kind of slowly build back into training, whereas you'd almost have to hit it a bit hard, quite hard, quite soon. And I guess you'd have to adjust the start of the season as well. You wouldn't be starting till you'd almost have to sacrifice maybe like opening weekend to then, and maybe do starting like a bit later on in the year. It's tricky to try and work it all out.
Do you like that? I think this is like an interesting part of cycling, and even talking to amateur cyclists. I talked to this guy in Texas the other day, and he's like, well, it's really weird, we hit out super hard in February until like April, then it gets deathly hot, so people, like, the races kind of dwindle because no one wants to race. Then we come back hard in fall, and so it's kind of like picking, choosing, crafting when you're going to try and be good. Do you like this puzzle, or is it
I think it's I love it, but it's also it's so difficult in our sport when there is so many races. There's so many there's so much, you kind of almost have to it's quite difficult to peak, to actually peak, in the same way that if you're a 400-meter runner, or you've kind of got you've got less competition, so it's almost easier to target said competition. You have it's easier to sort of periodize your training leading up to that point, whereas in our job, it's like, yes, I kind of need to come into the season going really well, but I also need to be able to use those races to build, be better, and get better with the races. But you're not in control of the races, and nowadays the racing's so hard that you almost have to. Like, I think it was last year where there was a day of Paris-Nice that was cancelled because of the wind. Was it last year? I think it was last year.
I don't know. I was going to say, because it's so hard for us to even keep up watching all the races, let alone doing the races. So it's like.
But we basically had like a day off in the middle of Paris-Nice. And I was actually thinking, wow, this is great. Because normally Paris is borderline too hard if you're then going to go to San Remo and do the races after that. But I was like, no, this is great. I'm going to be able to just, Paris is going to be, the kind of load of Paris will be not as bad as it could be, which could potentially tip you over the edge of being too fatigued. I think that's the real balance, and I think I definitely messed up a little bit last year with just potentially overdoing it, because you don't, the racing, it's you know, it's so on, you know, this nowadays, like straight first race of the year is actually sometimes the hardest ones, and you almost have to, it's managing how much you rest and actually how much you recover from those races that is quite difficult. Because, you know, say you're in March and a race hasn't gone well, your mentality is going to be like, oh, I need to train more, I need to get myself better. But actually, you probably, maybe you're just a bit tired. You probably need to do the opposite of what what you think, which is kind of the slight attitude I'm taking into next year, I'd say. Is just doing less, almost.
Embracing less is more at times.
Yeah, yeah. But that doesn't mean we're not riding our bikes stupid hours all the time. But it's like, it's when it's making sure you really stop at points,
Mm-hmm.
and soak it all up, rather than, because ultimately, I keep riding my bike. It's out of a desire to get better. It's with the right intention, but I'm probably I'm adding too much fatigue to myself, and it's probably not going the right way. But it's, as you said, it's very tricky, and I feel like I'm going to spend my whole career being like, oh, this worked, so I'll do this, and then the next year I'll do the same thing. It won't work the same way. Then I'll be like, oh no, I've got to do this, and then it's going to be an endless cycle.
It's super interesting to hear how you guys think about it. I just did a podcast with Alex Kirsch from Lidl, and he was like talking about, when does he copy and paste? He's like, well, I was running really hot then. Do I redo that? Or like, have things changed, and what's coming after, and what did I do before? And it's like trying to
Yeah,
put these all together as you guys go through is really interesting to hear, just the verbalization of the training.
because it's so, yeah, it's not that simple, because even now I'm, I kind of, you start the season, I'm doing similar kinds of efforts. I've had so many long chats with my coach about this, but similar kinds of efforts to last year. But last year I'd broken my collarbone in August, and there was quite a lot of time that I'd had off, so I was actually coming, because you almost have to look at it at an even bigger picture. Like, I did quite a lot of racing at the back end of this season, and okay, I did have 4 weeks off, but you're already probably going to be starting at a slightly better level than I did the year before. It's like, even the year I did the Vuelta, man, you come, you even after 4 weeks off, you come into it, and I was at straight away like, wow, okay, I know, I can tell that I've got this extra bank, extra base, that, because it's not just, you get your training peaks 40-day CTL value or whatever, but actually it goes back further than that, I think. Way further. So it's but what I'm saying is, I think I should be in a better place coming into next season, but to be honest, I don't really know. I don't think anyone, you ever really know.
What, as you mentioned, base, so we're recording this on November 19th. This probably won't post until like January. What are you doing November, December that you can share to prepare for, will the first race be in February or late January?
Well,
I
I
guess you
think
don't know yet.
for me will probably be mid-Feb, I reckon, first
Okay.
race.
So then, yeah, so we've got 3 months. What are the next 3 months going to mainly consist of for you to get ready for that?
It's just the way I've sort of always kind of periodized it is, right now up until maybe the December camp, you really just you build up kind of from zone 1 to zone 2, and maybe you trickle in a bit of zone 3, and that's all the way up into December camp. You don't actually, I don't tend to go really that, like, start with that early with the kind of VO2 harder efforts. I think I sprinkle in a lot of sprints and kind of starts to keep that punchiness going. And I'm often doing the most time. I'm spending the most time in the gym in this period now. But it's kind of like building up a sort of quite a strong base alongside the gym of just sort of zone 2 riding, just sort of blocks of pressing on a little bit of torque work. But it's mostly, I've realised, I think it's hard to do any more intensity when you're spending extra time in the gym. I think the gym is, the dom, you do get DOMs, and it's like managing the gains from that. I think if I didn't do any gym, I probably would sprinkle in a bit more intensity here and there. But actually, when you're on sort of 2, sometimes even earlier in sort of start of November, 3 gym sessions a week, I think it's good to try and get the most out of that. And I think the gym, I think it will. I feel like it will definitely pay dividend the more I do it over the course of my whole career. I think it's really valuable just to create robustness, and I think I'm quite lucky that as an under 23 I was supported by British Cycling, and we always had some kind of gym program. I probably didn't follow it as religiously as I do now, but I still had that sort of structure of doing gym stuff. And as a result, I can't think of many times I've had like knee niggles or any problems like that. So from a kind of injury prevention, I think it's really good to sort of this period get in the gym. And then I guess, performance wise, it's funny though, I can't say that it hasn't helped, but I do you know what I mean? It's if I didn't do the gym, maybe I wouldn't be as explosive. I don't know. It's these things are so, they're not simple things to measure, but I definitely I kind of like mixing it up, going to the gym, do some squats, and then I love this time of year for riding because it's kind of quite straightforward. You don't have to kind of remember what your sets of training are. It's like, okay, I'm going to go out, do this loop with some friends, maybe press on a bit on this climb. It's a good time of year to be riding your bike, that's for sure.
So you mentioned squats. What lifts do you think move the needle the most for you or give you the most gains for riding a bike?
I kind of varied it a bit in the past, but sort of most sessions for me will involve some kind of back squat variation, and then a bit on the leg press, and maybe, I don't like doing them, but that's probably because that means they're probably good for me to do them, but like some kind of split squat, whether it's like a Bulgarian or something like that. I think that's most of my sessions are based around those kind of three key lifts. Maybe I put some RDLs in there, or like I was deadlifting a bit in the past, but I think you kind of it's better to do that with like the trap bar, not like just a straight deadlift, because you can kind of mess up your back a little bit if you get too excited. Sometimes if you go into a public gym and you see all these big guys lifting heavy weights and you're there, you scrawny little cyclist, you kind of get tempted to. I did sort of mess up the other day. There was, there was sort of 4 spots to squat, and the woman I think it was a woman in front of me next to me was just, it was really impressive how low she was squatting to. And I was like almost questioning myself, like, oh, actually, I don't think I'm squatting, maybe I'm not squatting deep enough. So I definitely paid the price of squatting a little bit too deep after that day. Just trying not to look like, trying to look like I know what I'm doing, But luckily we've got a good gym coach sort of supporting all that. But yeah.
Do you feel like when you called yourself an opportunist, and, for people that might not know Fred's results, you're in Grand Tour stages at the pointy end, you're doing the classics, as you mentioned, you can time trial. Is there any pressure to sort of like hone in on one direction, or does the team like that vibe of this guy can do a lot of different things?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's something that I've almost had to sort of think about, really. It's like, actually, I can be consistently getting good results in lots of different races, but actually what I kind of now need to convert those sort of top tens, top fives in the, whether it's in a bunch sprint or in a time trial. It's like, actually, what does I want to win bike races, you know. I want to win, get to the end of being in the breakaway or being in a smaller classic or whatever, and being in a position to win. And I think it's now, I kind of, I felt the pressure of that a little bit this last season, and I think, like what we were saying before, maybe I sort of pushed myself too far to try and. But I think now I'm still thinking the same thing. It's like, actually, I need to stick to what I really excel at, which is kind of being in those real small bunch positions and trying to win something from a little sprint. I think that's it's in order to win more bike races and get better results. I think I need to try and be really good at one thing rather than be decent at lots of things. And that's where I think maybe the time trialing might take a bit of a step back. Like, obviously, I think riding a time trial bike is really useful. I think I'll still train on it, but not with the same intention. I think nowadays there's a lot of guys that can do really impressive time trials. So I'm kind of basically trying to just sort of hone in on what I can really, really do well at. I think that's kind of where I can make the next step, I think.
What do you think is the benefit of riding the TT bike?
It's just I think when you're just that kind of sort of closed hip angle, I think engaging your glutes. I think just the way you pedal in that when you're on your TT bike doing efforts or whatever, then helps for when I'm on my road bike doing efforts, trying to be aerodynamic. I think it helps both ways, and I think I definitely didn't, maybe last year didn't do that much, kind of really trying to be strong on the flat. It's easy to just go out and do your efforts on climbs and stuff, but actually where I'm going to make the difference if I'm attacking or whatever is actually on the flat bits of road. I need to be able to get over the climb and put in a dig and be really strong on the flat stretch of road to the finish or whatever. That's where I can excel, and I kind of need sort of thinking now, sort of speaking to my coach about it. Like, who cares what the numbers are if I'm doing VO2 efforts on the flat? Let's just do them in that aero position or whatever to try and really maximise where we can hopefully sort of take some opportunities, next year.
So I was going to ask you that at this point of your career, is it more just putting out the same watts in a more aero position, or are you still trying to eke out more watts, or how do you balance that? Because as you said, am I doing the VO2 for more power, or am I doing the VO2 as a race simulation when I'm super aero trying to get away at that last K? Or maybe you're doing both.
Yeah, I guess it's a bit of both, but I think I now, after last year, where it was sort of the first year where I didn't have the same level of improvement as I'd noticed up until that point. Up until this year, I feel like every year I stepped up a level in terms of physical ability, and last year was sort of the first year where I was like actually comparing numbers to the previous years a bit more. Like, oh, hang on a minute, I'm not as good as in that regard, or I think you still probably improve year on year, but so does the sport, and I don't think it's now like coming to a realization where, okay, I'm not going to step up the same amount each time. I probably need to, like you said, work a bit more on still being able to make an equal gain, which would be on aerodynamics and would be on just being able to put out power in a more aero position. I think that's definitely becoming much more important in the sport in general anyway. Just being aero.
So I was looking way back on the Instagram. Did you start on the track or rode at the same time?
No, I fully started on the track.
Okay.
So when I was probably up until the age of like 18, I sort of was pretty sure that I was going to be my pathway would have been go to the Olympics on the track and then eke out a road career after that. But yeah, things weren't going as well on the track, and I was actually excelling a lot more on the road when I was sort of 19, 20. So I was like, actually, this is. Then obviously opportunity came with the team. So yeah. But the track is. I still have a sort of strong affinity to it. I've kind of moved away from Manchester now, so I'm further away from what I'm kind of used to. But I still. I feel like it's always going to be in the back of my mind, just because I love it. I love Madison racing. Like the Ghent 6 days have been on the last week, and I did it a couple of years ago with Ethan, and it was just so much fun. And I'd love to. It kind of makes just seeing a mate of mine's doing it as well, and was doing it last week, and I was almost a bit jealous. I was like, oh, actually, I'd love to do a bit of track, but it's like you said, it's I could sprinkle a bit of track in, but then am I focusing on what the ultimate goal is? And I've kind of realised that the ultimate goal is to try and podium one of these massive races, whether that's Flanders or I've kind of realised the last few years that's what I want the most. So that's kind of what you have to put your energy into. You can't put your energy into loads of things and expect amazing results in all of them. You kind of have to have to choose. And I'll probably do a little bit of track because it does help. It definitely, training on the track definitely supports being sort of comfortable, sort of putting out power in that kind of that sort of tucked in position. But yeah, it's hard balancing all these things. But I do love my job. I'm maybe sound like I'm complaining, but it's a very good place to be in.
No, it doesn't sound like complaining. I love just hearing the thought process of all of this. Do you feel like besides putting out power in that aero position that you brought anything over from the training or racing from the track that you still apply to the road?
I guess kind of like tactically a little bit, picking out the right move. I think I always liked kind of the sort of points races when I was younger, and all kind of trying to work out what's going on and what the best sort of decision making. I think that definitely sort of came across from the track. I guess just pedaling in general. I think I grew up. Everyone's sort of getting obsessed because Paddy was using 165 cranks, and a few guys in my team like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go shorter cranks, and I was sort of a bit like, yeah, well we were using short cranks ages ago. I was using 165s from the whole time I was racing on the track up until when I stopped a few years ago. So it's kind of, I feel like maybe I've already got that sort of pedaling part pretty good. I think the souplesse, or whatever you want to call it, I feel like that from just growing up spinning my legs like crazy, trying to beat the adults at my local track. I think that was probably a gain when I was younger growing up.
Would you ever ride a fixed gear or a track bike more for that, or do you feel like that, as you said, like that's
I
in
think
my
so.
legs, I've got it?
No, I think so. I think, and that is something that I'm definitely looking to. Again, talking about like balancing things, I think that's something that I'm definitely going to need to maintain.
Mm-hmm.
Just sort of regulating cadence and just making sure you're doing sort of cadence drills, especially like moving up, living in Andorra. I feel like you can get sucked into just riding at not varying your cadence and just riding up, I don't know, whatever it would be, but riding at one value just because that's comfortable up the climb, and then you just freewheel down the hill and then do another climb or whatever. You kind of you don't vary your cadence as much as as what you're used to. So I guess it's just being aware of that sort of going forward. But man, this training, I feel like I could just, there's so many like different ways to skin a cat. So it's like, yeah.
So we kind of talked about the November, December. let's say you get into January and you're 4 weeks out to the first race. What does training switch to then, if it changes at all? So you're probably going before you're doing zone 1, 2, and 3, and I'm assuming from a 5-zone model. What's that 4 weeks before like?
Yeah, that's where it's again based on what you want out of the start of the season. It kind of it I guess it depends on rider to rider, but for someone like me who really wants to do well in the classics, and let's face it, for me, sort of looking into next year, and I was sort of speaking to what I sort of discussed with my coach is actually, let's face it, in the biggest classics, I'm probably not, I'm not going to be on this. There's, there are these top guys in the sport, and competing with them is very difficult. So I think the team sort of came to me and were a bit like, well, why don't you just try and be absolutely flying in some of the earlier races? So in, say, like opening weekend or something like that. And I think that's what the plan is. I don't know how I feel about that, because, saying, oh yeah, I'm going to be absolutely going to be trying to be going as best as possible in February or start of March sometimes could lead to, maybe the season feeling quite long once you get to October. But I kind of on the, be on the same sort of page with them. Like, maybe last year we made the mistake of sort of holding back a bit too much, whereas actually it would have been better to just get into a really good place racing fitness wise and then just see how long you can hold it. Because that did sort of work in the past. But yeah, who knows? Who knows? Like, it's
Another puzzle.
another puzzle, mate. In January, but basically, like, to answer your question, in January it gets, especially the January camp, it will get a lot more sort of doing those real sort of start introducing those real sort of race specific efforts and getting a bit more sort of getting that VO2 in and getting the almost starting trickling in a bit of motor pacing, I guess, and a bit of just kind of a bit of heavy breathing, basically.
Okay,
That's where
that.
that's where the heavy breathing starts. Is that sort of starts that block, but it's really about not doing too much again. It's like making sure that, because I still, that 22 season, which was maybe the best season I've had, I broke my collarbone in December, and in February in the Saudi tour, I actually also broke a little bone in my hand. So I had two kind of forced periods of rest, and that, again, speaking to my coach, that actually set me up really well. So it's almost doing the training, but then having the balls to say, okay, we're close to the race now. Let's just chill, and then I think I've collected enough sort of information over the years that I think I'm gonna, even if the team are like, Fred, what are you doing? I'm gonna be just chilling a bit more coming up to, because but sometimes it's easy just to give yourself the fatigue because you feel good, but you need to feel good in the race. That's the goal, is to be absolutely flying in the race and not 2 weeks before on some climb in Calpe or whatever.
What's your favorite heavy breathing VO2 way to train?
Oh, one I do a lot is, I do quite a lot of just like 5 by 5 minutes.
Okay.
With not too much recovery. Sort of, probably like 10 minutes recovery. I think that normally is a good indication of how well I'm going. And you can sort of get 5-minute consistent efforts.
I was curious. Everyone's like a little bit different on the pacing there. Like some people are like, well, I want at least the first 3 to be the same, and then like maybe I'm going to empty it a little bit on the fourth and the fifth, whatever. You're trying to go straight across the board?
Yeah, because I think really I've not done that. Sometimes in races but in the sort of classic, the races I'm targeting is those efforts it's just repeat. It's just doing them repeatedly. Like you will have a key big spike maybe at one point in the race, but you are just right. It's just on off on off on off, and just being able to do that just all like consistently is really really important. I think that's because ultimately, to be honest, since I was probably like my values or whatever, they probably haven't got, as I've got older, they probably haven't got that much. The amount of watts that I could do for 5 minutes probably hasn't increased that much, but just the amount of times I could do, say, 20 watts less than that for 5 minutes has gone up massively. So I think that's a real key thing to sort of make sure you've got nailed. But then again, this year I'll be trying to do that, and also, but not. I don't want to create too much fatigue, you know. So maybe I won't be doing so many of these 5x5 testy efforts, you know. It's tricky. I mean, there's lots of. I mean, I do lots of variations within that, but that's kind of like standard, you know. That's like sort of yeah.
No, that's good. If you decided that you wanted to come out super hot, smoking for the first race, how many weeks do you think you need to get ready for that? Is that like 3 weeks and you're ready to go? 6 weeks? I realize it's kind of like a granular and there's lots of variables that depend on, but where would you be like, okay, I need to start hitting it hard this far out?
I think for me, what I've kind of realised is actually if I start hitting it out hard too early, I can actually get into that sort of really good shape quite quickly if I just immediately start with doing those real high intensity efforts. So it's kind of, I think, yeah, I probably only need maybe even probably like two weeks of those kind of sessions, 2 or 3 weeks of those kind of sessions, and it off on the back of a big load of base.
Mm-hmm.
So like you get real load of sort of zone 2, like high zone 2, zone 3 kind of base. Then you just do your 2-3 weeks of explosivity, bit of sort of 1 minute efforts, kind of your 5 minutes or your that heavy breathing stuff, and then I'll be in a good place.
Cool.
That's what I'd say.
So
and it's nice talking about it because sometimes I think, oh, do I actually know what I'm doing? You know, like there are so many ideas. Do I know what? But I kind of know that works. Like I know that much about myself. You know, I know that much about my body that's worked in the past.
That is amazing. So on the flip side, then maybe of knowing the things that help you get ready, have you ever looked back and has there been anything that impeded your progress? You talked about maybe doing too much. Any like fads or just something when you've looked back, thought, oof, probably shouldn't have done that type of training.
Yeah, I think basically this year is a really good example of just like trying to do a bit too much of everything. I think like even the sort of this time coming to this last season, so November, December last year, I was really already quite focused on losing weight, and kind of in doing that, you're really taken away from the training you're doing at the time. I'd argue the gym work I was doing then probably I didn't get half as many benefits from it because I was thinking, right, for the classics, one thing that's going to make me a bit better is if I'm a little bit lighter. Because I was a bit heavier last time, so I'm going to try and be a bit lighter. But actually, upon reflection, I really focused on my weight too much, and I lost that. And I think I just created too much fatigue. And actually, I think it was a camp I went to Gran Canaria sort of pre-opening weekend, and I think I sort of mentioned before, like sort of comparing to previous years, I was sort of doing efforts and stuff, and I was a bit like, oh, I don't think I'm actually in the same. Okay, I'm a couple kilos lighter than this time last year, but I don't have that same feeling of, yeah, I'm going really well. Like the weight was good, but the good in quotation marks, but the actual sort of numbers in the training wasn't quite what I sort of expected, and that was a bit of a sort of bit of a kind of realization. Like, actually, no, that's you can't just train yourself into the ground and sort of give yourself a bit of a deficit, and that's going to make you a great bike rider. You've got to really sort of balance your rest and create a good balance with it all. I think that was definitely this last season was definitely one for lots of learning points. That's for sure.
What's the in training, anything that, you hear the term Broscience, is there anything that you believe in that you do that you might not even want to admit on a podcast that you really have a strong feeling this helps make you faster? There's no data. Maybe some of your friends do it. Maybe they don't. Maybe your maybe some old cyclist told you about it. Is there anything that you're doing that's like, I don't know why this makes me better, but it sure as hell does?
That's a good one. I always I just always do little like form check sprints in my training. Like even today, I think I was out on my TT bike today, and I just did like just a little acceleration, just like 3 seconds or something, just to I don't know whether I'm trying to get a peak power or not. I don't think I'm. It's not. I'm trying to get a peak. I'm just like I don't. And when I was there was this little kind of. I think just because that's what I do when I was younger. Like the last hill coming back through Crystal Palace into sort of before I get back home to where my parents live was this sort of 30-second hill, and we'd always just kill each other up it just to try and be first to the top. And I think maybe that's sort of stayed with me, that I always just do like some kind of just time. But now, obviously, I don't do a big 30-second sprint. I probably, I always do some kind of little like form checker at the end of every ride. And I say every ride because it probably is. If I'm alone, I probably will just do a little sprint or something. I don't know. And I don't, again, I've got no idea whether that's good or not. But I think normally I'll know if I've like kind of fueled myself. Like now I've realized that I know if I've fueled myself well, if I want to do it. Does that make sense? If I'm like, oh yeah, I'll do a little, then that probably means that I don't know whether this is true or not, but that maybe in my head I'm like, I don't know, I fueled myself well because I've still got the facilities to do a little acceleration or whatever. But yeah,
So on
that's
a
my
similar
random little thing.
Yeah, I'd be curious actually, because we were having a conversation of, when you ever have those feelings when you don't want to go hard, you don't want to go do a VO2, you don't even want to do over unders. We're like, ooh, maybe you're just riding too much. You've done too much base because you're just fatigued. But when you're riding a ton of zone two, you don't really feel tired. But then when it's time to turn it on, it's like, oof, I'm actually pretty gassed. Like this is maybe
Yeah,
almost a similar thread. Like when you're fueled well, you know that you can do these little sprints and you want to do them. Is that like a similar type of vibe?
yeah. I think that's kind of sums it up. I think that's kind of maybe that's where that you're giving me a reason to just keep doing to keep doing this little strategy basically. But I think that sounds that no, but it kind of makes sense. Like if you're you know again, I think it goes back to where I want to be and how I want to be feeling on the bike in say February time, sort of
Mhm.
end of Feb. You want to be going out riding and having that kind of feeling like, oh, I could just ride really hard here
Mhm.
and just smash up this climb, or I could just twat it for 15-20 minutes on the flat, or you want to have that feeling. You don't want to have the kind of but that's what's so hard about our sport and training for our sport is you also have to have a massive amount of fatigue resistance. You have to be able to withstand 6-hour races, and so it's great and all being fresh, but and I think maybe I'll never come to the point where I've got the perfect balance of both, but you need to be fresh but also be fatigued enough or have done enough training to deal with a Grand Tour or a 6-hour long classic. It's difficult. It's difficult.
Well, I love that you're trying to solve the puzzle. That is for darn sure. You
Oh yeah,
think
I'm trying.
about you think about training a lot, it seems. What would be underrated in training?
Underrated. I'll just say I'll go with the same kind of. I'll just say resting.
Yeah, no, it's good.
Yeah, I
So do
think
you agree then with people that say it's not overtraining, it's under recovered?
yeah, yeah. I reckon so. I think I definitely now I'm trying to, again, you go into each season, you're like, what can I do better at? And I think maybe this year it could just be doing something simple like trying to sleep an extra 30 minutes. Like just trying to recover better and trying to. Because also, when you're thinking about, when you're in that phase of sort of thinking about weight and stuff, you almost, when you're trying to get yourself in good shape, you almost think that you need to ride your bike every day. And actually, I think I used to do it when I was younger. I just, if I had if my coach had set me a rest day, I just did nothing. But actually, I reckon that's probably quite good. Just do nothing. You don't actually have to. You've got to absorb the training that you're doing.
Mhm.
You've got to soak it up somewhere. So yeah. Again, I hope the team aren't too worried when I say, yeah, over Christmas I'm gonna have 3 days super just do nothing. But they see that as, oh, you're gonna go and just smash the mince pies. But no, I think actually around Christmas time would be a good place to take your first time to just absorb the training.
Get that broken bone in the hand and chill,
Yeah,
as you said.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So to put you on the spot, Instagram people love banger workout sessions. And so we'll usually make like a little graphic. And do you have, besides the 5x5, just something that's like a brutal banger day on the bike?
Yeah, I think my again this almost like a kind of race sim ride
Hmm.
that I've
Give
done
it to
in the
us.
past, which is like I'd go out and it'd probably be like a 5 hour ride,
Okay.
and in the first 3 hours you would accumulate, maybe you'd probably do in total maybe an hour and a half of sap, so like high zone 2. So you just really rack up the kilojoules in the first 3 hours. So let's call it two 45-minute blocks of sap,
What does
and
SAP
then
stand for?
sustained aerobic power.
Okay.
I think. Man, I see it. I should know that. I see it so much, but it's basically just. I think it's just like high zone 2.
High zone 2. I'm into it.
Yeah, and to rack up the kilojoules, and then once you've racked up the kilojoules, do 120 minute after 3 hours. You, you do 120 minute at just under threshold.
We'll call it 95%.
Yeah, basically, yeah, near enough threshold. You
Okay.
rest for 10 minutes, and then do uh yeah, then you do, then do another 20 minute where you ride for the first 10 minutes at that same pace as the last 20 minutes. So you ride it, um, call it, yeah, just below FTP, and then the last 10 minutes you basically ramp it till you go in max.
Mm.
So it's like,
I like
so you do
that.
you rack up your kgs with your zone 2, high zone 2. You do a couple of 20 minute like sort of thresholdy, over threshold efforts, and
Mm-hmm.
then in the last hour, I can't remember how. Again, I can't remember. Sometimes I do more, sometimes I do less. But in the last hour, do some pretty much 1 minute all out efforts with, call it four. Yeah, four. Normally it's like four. I think normally I've done four 1 minute. They normally have not. Yeah, 4 minute pretty much almost all out. But basically, so as each one is like, again, you get the consistency over the four.
Okay.
So four like max, or four hard 1 minute efforts in the last hour with yeah, just spread across the last hour.
Sounds terrible.
it's terrible. And
That
again,
sounds horrible.
I mean that's just a hard session I can pick up in the head. But I probably do that maybe 3 times a year, or 4. Like you don't do that a lot, but that's like I guess to check, maybe just check how you're going, or just to kind of, once you've done that and you do it well, you're in a really good place.
I love that. That's yeah. I don't know if I want to do that one. Sometimes I'd like to try these, but this one I might. We'll see.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's not an easy one, I must say.
I want to respect.
I'm trying to think the last time I did it.
What do
I've
you call?
definitely
Do you post all these on Strava? What do you call this if you do it?
I wouldn't have called it anything on Strava.
Just like a death bones emoji.
Yeah, probably. But some kind of variation of that, basically.
I want to respect that we're
Close,
almost to an hour
close.
here. But nutrition, let's just breeze through this. Anything unique, any supplements, anything odd that you're doing on the bike that might stand out?
Um, for me, it's just finding. I really enjoy finding items that have a good carb to size ratio.
Carb to size. What's your go-to?
So I realized that Pop Tarts, you could get them in the UK, and for like one like Pop Tart pack, it was like 70 grams of carbs, I think,
Okay.
and that felt. I was quite proud. I'd use them quite a lot, actually. I don't think my nutritionists would like the fact I just put these random, but it is just pure. They're just pure sugar, and so I reckon it's probably
Do they
me all right.
crumble in your pocket at all?
Now they get a nice. You put them in, supposed to put them in a toaster, but they get a nice kind of. You got to wait a bit. They get nice and warm in your pocket, and then they're okay to just crack open.
Fair enough. Pop Tarts. Any supplements?
Supplements. I mean, yeah. In terms of what, like in training or just in.
Yeah, just like I take these vitamins or I use this product or blah blah blah.
Um, Not really.
Okay.
I think, to be fair, I think creatine is something that's actually underrated in cycling a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I think creatine's really. I know this kind of sort of gym coach that sort of come to our team. This sort of recently is sort of talking to me about it and saying how it's interesting how the team is sort of worried about the weight. There's the like kind of weight gain and element, because obviously you gain water weight with it, but actually for that explosivity, it's like one of the most well tested sort of supplements that, and I don't think I don't know hear that many people talking about it in terms of in cycling.
Mm-hmm.
I think just because of that added weight, you can add water weight, so that reduces your watts per kilo. So that means no.
Yeah,
maybe
bad.
that's the thinking. I don't know.
Man, Fred, this was awesome. You are a super interesting person to listen to talk about training and how you put everything together. I really appreciate your candor and sharing all this.
I feel like I've just rambled and rambled.
This is the best type of podcast. I promise you. It's like there's just so many nuggets in here for people to pull from. To similar to how you said, you're like, man, you're helping me justify doing these form check sprints. Someone hears something that they do, like 5x5s. It seems like more people are into 40/20s now. I love 5x5s. And I think when someone hears you talking about, like, oh, okay, this works for me. Fred's doing it. Cool. Like, check the box. I'm going to not
Yeah, yeah.
overthink this too much. So
It's funny now you said that. I actually, me and my coach, we were talking. We were like, oh, maybe we do more 40/20. So it's changing. It's changing so much. It really.
it's things kind of go full circle though sometimes. I think that's the interesting thing
Yeah.
of looking back on training of there's periods when I look back, I'm like, what the hell was I doing that for? There's other times like, oh, I should go back and do that. I kind of forgot about that. So it's just the puzzle. I love the puzzle of training. It sounds like you're just super into what you're doing, where it's taking you, going from A to B. So My last question is, so we talked about Strava. You're obviously on Instagram. That's where we connected. Do you blog, TikTok? Where can people follow you? What's the best spot to follow you to see what's going on in 2025?
To be honest, I guess I'm not too regularly posting on Instagram, so you probably don't know. I reckon actually just on Strava, especially
Okay.
if you're listening to this podcast, you'd probably I don't maybe describe on my rides what I've done. It just normally just says morning ride, but
Oh,
that's
don't
probably
worry.
my most regular kind of. Obviously, I post all my training on there, but
People will tell you. They will dig into your rides. That is for
I
sure.
do, I do, I do hide my power though,
Oh, okay.
which is a shame. But maybe I should. I don't know. I've never. I don't know. Some people do it. Some people don't.
Yeah. So how
Don't know
come?
I think we. It's. I think actually. Again, I hope I don't get. I don't think I'd get in trouble for saying this, but we got in. We on our team. We just went and did some in Calpe. Did some test efforts up Valdeba, and the team were a little bit like, guys, you basically like everyone know. It's quite obvious that we were all doing these test efforts because everyone put it on Strava, and the team were a bit like, maybe we just don't want everyone to know how well you're going. Like keep it a bit because it is you. It's kind of you could see he's done this many watts up Valdeba for 20 minutes. That's how well it's almost
Yeah.
like straight away like that's you could.
But even so, like racing is so much more dynamic than just watts up a climb. And I feel like
Well,
even if you did crush it, wouldn't you want people to be thinking, "Oh my God, did you see what Fred just did?"
yeah,
That
true.
I would be more. I would be more worried if you thought. See, and you could even twist the narrative of this one. If you went full gas and you're like, "Oh, dude, that was not good." Oh yeah, that was my sweet spot effort.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, that's true. That's a good point. I mean, yeah, I guess to be honest, it doesn't actually. It probably doesn't matter as much as it feels like.
yeah.
No one really
I mean,
is looking at it.
it always blows my mind when amateurs do that. Amateurs start doing that now, and me being another amateur, I'm like, why is this guy not posting watts? It's odd. It just seems weird.
Yeah, that part I probably don't. I don't get so much. I do find it not. Like if they say there's like a segment you want to go for, and you kind of need to know roughly how many watts you're going to have to push, and then the person that's done it hasn't put the. Do you know what I mean? So there's no way of knowing whether you can actually get the segment or not.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's. And here I am without posting my watts. So.
So the interesting thing too is it's like, when do you put out the watts? Because my friend here, I think maybe it was a 7-minute effort. It's like a little switchback. It flattens out as you take kind of like a sharp turn, and then it kicks up at the end. And we looked, he had better watts per kg, but I must have like doled out the watts at the right time better because I beat him
Oh,
by
I see.
7 or 8 seconds. So we're like, wait a minute, this is like maybe all this Strava
To be fair,
stalking doesn't do anything.
also actually the power meters.
Yeah,
There's
the
still not.
variance.
There's still some big variations. Like really, like even depending on like chain. Like we were using some of those carbon chain rings, and sometimes they just don't give you. They give you like almost. They give you loads less watts. You like comparing watts to something. You're like, hang on a minute.
Interesting.
That race was really hard, and I've averaged 200 watts. Like, what's that all about? So I think there still isn't. Like some power meters read more than others as well.
Yeah.
So it's actually you give me all the more reason to put my watts on Strava so people can see.
Let's go.
See my training.
All right, watts for the people. Dude, thank you for doing this. Everybody give him some kudos and dig into his training on Strava. Maybe you'll see him on Instagram. Good luck with your training racing. We'll talk to everybody soon.